Welcome to Emotional Sobriety. We have Allen on deck. Thom is soon incoming, and you think he's stuck in town somewhere, Nashville, I imagine, or he's just outside Nashville, but up to different cowboy activities, I imagine. How you doing this weekend, Allen?
Well, my personal crisis continues on, but I am starting to accept it more, adapt to it more, and realize that I'm moving into a new chapter in my whole amazing life, and it has been an amazing life. I mean, when I look back over, I'm 72 years old. When I look back over, let's say, the 52 years I've been in recovery, there's been incredible times, I mean, filled with joy, opportunities that I could have never imagined or dreamed of, and experiences and love and connection. And there's been a lot of pain and dark times and struggles, and far from just a straight line to joy and happiness all the time. And that's kind of what we wanted to focus on this podcast today: emotional sobriety and paradox. I went to a weekend many years ago with Father Richard Rohr called Holding the Paradox. And it was a spirituality weekend. And in fact, it was bringing in the new year. I forgot what year I was there. And the whole theme of that weekend was that life is filled with paradoxes. And one of the challenges each and every one of us have is how we deal with these paradoxes in our life. The one that religion really focuses on a lot is the fact that we're mortal beings. We're not immortal. That I'm alive right now, but every moment I'm heading towards my death. That's a paradox. Right? This moment I'm full of life, but also this moment I am moving towards a state of atrophy. I'm going to disappear at some point in time. So let's take a minute and define what a paradox is, because some people, well, I'm not so sure what that even means, right? So here's the definition out of the dictionary I just pulled up. A seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement or proposition that, when investigated or explained, may prove to be well-founded or true. So an apparently or seemingly absurd or self-contradictory statement or proposition that, when investigated or explained, may prove to be well-founded or true. Well, that's the importance of this discussion today, is that our life, if the truth be known, is filled with paradox. You hear Thom and I talk often about the different self parts, or the population of selves that exist within Alan Berger or Patrick Newman or Tom Rutledge or you who's ever listening to our podcast. And many of those self parts are in a paradoxical relationship.
For my baby's first recovery, understanding of this is admitting powerlessness to take power back.
There you go.
That is like the initial paradox that I confronted in recovery.
That's the initial paradox that we have to confront in order to establish a foundation. See, that's what's so important about this, is that paradox is really and accepting a paradox is at the core of what creates change. And that's why we're really focusing in and wanting to discuss this today, is because all change is paradoxical. When I accept my powerlessness, I discover what? A new power.
Mm-hmm.
When I accept that I'm living to die, I can live better. When I accept I'm selfish, I have a chance to be selfless. When I accept I'm dishonest and I operate out of integrity, I have a chance to regain my integrity. But see, this is counterculture Patrick, and I can't emphasize this enough. Our culture is all about just put your mind to it, you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the Nike slogan?
You can do it, put your back into it.
Just do it.
Oh, just do it. Sorry.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't sit in paradox. Don't talk about paradox. Just do it, which means claim one side of the paradox and go for it. Make a full commitment to that. But if I'm ambivalent, I can't become committed until I accept my ambivalence and deal with it. See, this is at the heart of emotional sobriety. Like right now, I don't want to accept what's going on in my life. And if I keep not accepting it, I'm going to get to acceptance. That's the truth of it. But everybody says, just move to acceptance, just accept yourself. Or I was at an AA meeting the other day, and the guy was talking about all of his self-loathing and how we all are filled with self-loathing. And he just says, and we just have to learn and find a way to forgive ourselves. But nobody ever talks about what does that process looks like? What does that process look like? How do I get from self-hate to self-love? By declaring my hatred for myself, not by jumping over that. You see, when we jump over a painful reality that we don't want to deal with, we're using what's called a spiritual bypass. We are avoiding dealing with a situation, and this happens a lot in the program with people, by turning it over to God, let's say.
Yeah.
I think turning it over to God can get you in a pause, which I think that's the important part sometimes, is living in the pause. I'm not so sure God's sitting there waiting for you to submit a problem that he's going to take into a committee meeting and decide what you should do about it.
Mm-hmm.
But by turning it over, you start to create a process within yourself where you may discover the solution. You see, it's so funny that we have such a narcissistic relationship with God. We think God is just sitting there waiting to hear from us and is ready to fulfill our request, right? It's like, since I've been a good boy, God, you're going to give me what I want. Yeah, well, Richard Rohr calls that thinking of God as terms of creating a meritocracy, that you're given grace and love because you've earned it. And, you know, I love the way he talks about God. You don't have to earn anything. God just loves you, period. God is love. It's not earned. It's just there for you to tap into, to be able to connect it to if you choose to do so. But I wanted to read another definition of paradox.
And then when you do, I've got a question.
All right, good. I like questions. So it's a very similar thing. I went to the American Psychological Association's dictionary of psychological terms, and they say the same thing: a surprising or self-contradictory statement that may nevertheless be true. It's the same theme, right? Is that there are these truths because reality is that there are always going to be two sides. So if we think of reality on a continuum of light to dark, you can't have light without dark. Dark defines light, light defines dark. The paradox of light in the relationship means that they are both important in terms of defining the other. See, my sorrow right now, you know, Patrick, I've cried with you. You've seen the pain I'm in. You've been incredibly empathetic and supportive with me. But all of this sorrow at some point will lead to me experiencing joy. Not soon enough for my book, I mean, for my life, right? I'd like it right now, damn it, right? Let it happen right this minute, please, please. I'm tired of crying. In fact, I was talking to Roger about this. I'm just exhausted with the amount of pain I've been in, man. It's been what? April is when this started? April, May, June, July?
That's a lot of suffering.
Oh my God, man. You know, 40 pounds worth. I've lost 40 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, you're literally wearing it on your body, you know, the pain.
It's a traumatic experience, man. It really is. Is the depression has really been tough at times for me to be dealing with.
When I see you allow yourself to cry, you know, I'm reminded of my aunt when my uncle passed from cancer, and she really allowed herself space for the grief as she moved through and out of that. And in myself, I recognize now, looking back, that my inability to cry or to really like name the things that I was feeling warped me. It was really, it twisted my relationship to the pain. And I guess like my question or my follow-up was going to be that paradox of, you have to mention the unmentionable. You have to, this part of yourself that, you know, just disgusts you, that you would really like to, I guess, eradicate, or maybe eradicate's the wrong word, but you want to mend this part. And you would just avoid, I just felt that if I just shoved it into a corner and put it in the dark, that eventually it would run out of oxygen and it would just dissipate. But that never happened. But why is that such a common misconception, do you feel, with people that are suffering, that the thing that they don't like about themselves, they got to keep it in the dark, they got to drown it when it cannot be drowned, right?
Well, this is that whole idea that if I own these things, that somehow it's going to make me feel less than. If I say, let's say I'm selfish, you're not a good person if you're selfish. So there's this whole pressure, right, to try to be a good person in our culture. But that's why I say this stuff we're talking about is so counterculture, because what we know is if you deny it, it's going to persist. It's not going to dissipate. It's not going anywhere. It's not like it goes away if you stuff it down. It ends up seeping through in other ways. And Freud was one of the first people to recognize this. He says unresolved trauma, while it gets repressed and buried for a while and you don't think about it, if it's not dealt with, it shows up later on in a really ugly form in your life. In a really ugly form, it comes in and becomes incredibly self-destructive because of the path that it drives you on. And there's so much wisdom in so many of the things that Freud said. So what we know today in psychotherapy and in recovery is that if I deny these things, they're going to persist. What we resist persists. It doesn't go away. So the paradoxical theory of change that this Dr. Beiser really identified and put words to, he said, if a person tries to change by being someone they're not, they can never change. Change occurs when we own who we are and what we're doing, then a new possibility can exist, but not until we claim it 100%. As I say that, I'm giving myself a little hope, Patrick.
That's nothing I don't know what happened, but for a long time, people were telling me that, and I didn't buy it.
Yeah.
But then
well,
something
it's hard
changed.
to buy because it goes such against everything we're taught. How is being powerless and admitting you're powerless going to help you solve a problem? See, that's why AA gets criticized by so many mental health professionals. And I've even heard Tony Robbins say that. I don't buy that AA stuff about being powerless. It's about claiming your power. Well, there's a lot of ways to claim your power. And one way is to claim your powerlessness. That's powerful. When I start to own these things, when I start to own who I am and what's going on, then I have a chance to change. I'll give you an example of it. And I'm not taking responsibility for what my soon to be ex-wife has done. But I realize in this whole thing, it's easy to focus on what she's doing, how she's behaving, what she's dealing with, what she's not dealing with, all that other stuff. But on my side, and this is the, I think, real important thing, there's an opportunity in this crisis for me to grow myself into what I can be, meaning to grow myself towards greater integrity. So let me tell you what this has brought up for me in one area of my life. In a lot of areas, you know me, I'm a pretty free guy. I say what's on my mind. There's not a lot of things that I stop myself from doing. I live my life pretty seamlessly. You've been at my house. You see how I function, how I am in psychotherapy, how I'm in these podcasts is how I show up downstairs when I'm having lunch with you guys, right? Or when I'm interacting with my kids. At least I hope so. Is that
right on? That's been my experience.
That's your experience with me, right? You don't see that burger puts on one face here and another face here. My life is pretty integrated across a lot of different areas, right?
Yeah, you're cool like that.
Well, thank you for that. It's taken a lot of work, but the one area I'm not as free in is I'm very shy sexually in the bedroom, in intimacy. And I realize that one of the things I want with whoever I end up as my next partner is to have the freedom in the bedroom that I experience across the other areas of my life. Now, it's taken 52 years for me to admit that. I'm admitting it publicly. I'm shy sexually, and I want to overcome that. And so what I did is I sought out a body therapist who does this specific work on helping people deal with their being able to embrace their sexuality and to be able to own it and to go with it. So 2 weeks from yesterday, I'm having this 2-hour body session that scares, right now my mouth just dried up, that scares the bejesus out of me, because I'm going to open up such a vulnerable area. It makes me even cry as I start to think about it. But it's an area I want to open up. I want that freedom, man. I want to be able to enjoy, a partner in the bedroom fully, and be able to look at their eyes and be able to keep contact with them, to have that greater degree of intimacy. I long for that. That would be so meaningful for me if I can do this work and get some help in being able to overcome my shyness. So that's an example. Without owning that, and I haven't for a long time, I tried to be more okay when I didn't feel okay.
Well,
Guess
that's
what?
a remarkable amount of self-care. I really admire you for that.
Well, look, it didn't work. I got to tell you, man, I tried to be okay and it didn't work. And now I want to do what I can to get okay in this area so I can live a fuller life and embrace all that life and all that a relationship has to offer me. Whoever that next person may be that I may be lucky enough to take this journey with, and
Mhm.
and we may be able to enjoy ourselves and to really, really be able to reap all of the benefits of what a safe relationship can yield. And that's the other thing I've got out of this. So I'll tell you another paradox I've had.
Mhm.
I've tried to create safety by being invulnerable.
Mhm.
Now think about that. I tried that same thing that Beiser was talking about. I tried to be invulnerable to create safety instead of owning how unsafe I felt. Now I am owning how unsafe I feel. And I'm really making that a real focus on my life. But I couldn't get there until I own that I want to be invulnerable and I don't want anybody to be able to hurt me and to have any real meaning to me, because I don't want to get crushed again, like I've been crushed. So my God, here are all these paradoxes that I'm starting to confront in my own personal life at 52 years, August 1st, a couple days from now,
Yeah, I
man.
was gonna say your sobriety birthday's coming up
It's right around, what is it? There's 30,
Tuesday or something.
yeah, there's 31 days in July. That August 1st, I will have 52 years in recovery. And what a journey it's been, man. What an amazing journey. And this amazing journey is not over. So, in our podcast in a couple of weeks, I'll share what my experience was with this one person. And then I'm also working with another body therapist on, I was sexually molested when I was young, when I was about 10 years old. And also it happened when I was in the Marine Corps. And I've got to deal with some of that too, because I think that feeds into some of what's going on with my shyness as well. So, some things are opening up for me, man. Hopefully this work will help me be able to create and integrate this freedom that I enjoy in so many areas of my life, in all areas of my life.
It's a lot of bravery, really.
Well, it's the bravery is coming out of, man, being in a lot of pain, Patrick.
Mm.
So it's a bravery. There may be some courage in it. There's also some desire for more, to be able to finally, be able to reap all of the benefits that I think emotional sobriety has to offer us, man.
Emotional sobriety is greater than or more useful than invulnerability. Invulnerability is unattainable. And the idea of invulnerability is very appealing, especially to a lot of men. And I think I can fall into a pattern of, or I want to take out an insurance policy on any pain ever touching me, but there's just no way to do that. No way to accomplish that.
I took it out. It didn't work.
You did your best.
I did my best, baby. I tried to, my whole life was a test of my invulnerability, as Dr. Miller said to me, one of the fellows that I've been consulting with to get some help with all this. And he said, Al, it's so important that now you can surrender that.
I'm reading that Codependency No More book, and I had to take a checklist, or there's an activity on like the 3rd chapter. And I checked every box. I mean, literally there's like a 0, 1, and a 2 next to like every quality of a codependent. Yeah. And so anyway, that made me feel, I don't know if maybe shame is too strong a word, but I definitely felt like, well, this is a spectrum that I need to be giving more attention to, in terms of like where I can muscle up, or these aspects of myself I can confront. And about to start couples therapy with my girlfriend.
That's right.
And
it's on the horizon.
Yeah. And I have hope about it. I have hope that like both, I feel that her and I are in better alignment than we've been historically, about like, there's places we could go with this therapy. There's the potential for success.
Yes, that's right.
And we haven't always been aligned about like the hope for that. But then also that like, I was gonna bring up, in the context of paradoxes, detachment is a thing that I just read about in this book about codependency, and the paradox of, to love somebody more fully, you need to be able to let go of like obsession about their actions or the things that they're going to do. Right. And you know what? And I wanted to put this to you. Baked into that, or at least the way it was written about that I was reading, is like, I felt that this book was asking of me, you need to trust that however things turn out, that it's going to turn out the way that it was meant to be. Or that, like when the chips fall, you know what I mean? Like, and the long view of history.
And we don't even have to, I think, invoke destiny as a way of dealing with it. We could just say things are going to turn out the way they're going to turn out. Our job is to deal with however they turn out. Now, if it helps you to say, well, this is how it was meant to be, to deal with it, okay. But you could also say, you know what? This may not be what I wanted. This may not be how I think things should have turned out or wanted things to turn out. But regardless of what I wanted, I'm powerless at times. Now, I'm not powerless in terms of how to deal with it, but I've got to accept my powerlessness, that things are going to happen that I don't necessarily want to have happen. This is once again the paradox, right? There's things that I can influence in my life, and there's things that I don't. That's a paradox. There's things I have power over, things that I don't. And see, that's what I mean about embracing it. Because see, I think what we try to do when we say, well, this is how it was meant to be, we're trying to have power over it. Oh, I've got control.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's why this is happening. It was supposed to happen. No, it's happening because it's happening. Now deal with it. I mean, see, it's that kind of a thing that we want people to understand.
That makes a lot of sense. And I suppose the detachment is in reference to detaching from unproductive worry.
Yeah, trying to control the other person's behavior. That's the detachment part, and worrying about taking care of ourselves and putting the effort towards getting ourselves centered.
These contradictory notions on our path to recovery keep cropping up again and again after that initial contradiction between claiming power and admitting powerlessness. And I just wanted to know, like, what is your view of the paradoxes inherent in recovery?
Yeah.
Can you speak to how those can be helpful? I mean, rather than thwarting of our
Well,
desire to get
yeah,
well.
and you're right. The original paradox is, because one of the things that that people lose sight of pretty quickly, with the 12 steps in addiction recovery, is that the first step doesn't say we're powerless people. It says we're powerless over alcohol, and ultimately in our language, the way we talk about it now, it means we're powerless over our addiction. Which in which we can take it even farther and say, what does that mean? That means I'm powerless over the fact that I have it. It's like whatever it is. It's like I have that condition, and so once you can, and of course the original paradox is if you want power back in your life, if you want to, and that's the unmanageability part, then you with humility, you totally acknowledge your powerlessness. Yeah, yeah, but see that and I just think they do show up all the time. But one of the things that get my attention about that, and probably got my attention the other day when we were in Thursday group and Thursday meeting, and Allen was talking about it, is I like panning back on paradoxes, because what ends up happening for me is they're not contradictory. They just coexist. I mean, it's very much what a lot of my intrapersonal process is about. It's like the idea is so I have one part that thinks this is a good idea, and then we could say we could do something more subtle, but we could just say drinking is a good idea, and part of me that says no, it's not, that kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, that's what do you get there? Well, that's a standoff. Well, it's not really. It's like when you pan back far and we get to the place and say what we want to be able, what people often will think is, okay, the problem there is the addiction. So in our language is so often, how do we get rid of it? How can I get rid of it? Or if somebody has hatred, they say, how do I get rid of this voice? If somebody has an eating disorder, how do I stop this voice? It's like, and of course, I think I put this in embracing fear, is the idea that in terms of fear, like everything else, it's like bad news, good news. The bad news is you want to get rid of this, and we have no way of doing that. The good news is, and it's really good news, we don't have to, because its existence alone is not a problem. It's only when we dig in, it's when we, what we resist persists. I mean, there's so much wisdom in those old Alcoholic Anonymous, cliches. And it's like, it's so we pan back to something and say this is a paradox. You go like, no, it's not. It's just, there's just two different parts of this process, or even just two different parts of me. And so the idea is not we're going, because I think a lot of times when we think paradox, we think there's a conflict that has to be played out. And in fact, what it is that's where, what I teach people to do is rather than go to battle, is you create, or we don't create it, we actually discover that wiser voice in us, that recovery voice, I often call it, and it is the wiser parts of ourselves, and it's the one that comes in and says, I'm in charge. Not I control everything, but I'm in charge. That means I'm going to make the decisions. And so I can have a part of me that thinks, I can have Tequila Boy over here thinking drink is the greatest thing in the world. I can have another guy back over there reminding me, what a piece of shit he thinks I am, and I can be over here as the decision maker, as the recovery voice decision maker, and I can even feel bad because that stuff's going on. It doesn't feel good, but it's like I can still make the right choice. I can still say, yeah, well, I realize that you're a piece of shit. I'm not surprised you think that. I understand you've always thought that. I don't expect, it's like we talk about with expectations with the emotional sobriety. I don't stop expecting people to be somebody other than they are, including those characters on the inside of us. It's like, Tequila Boy's always going to want to drink. He always, well, he does. No, he doesn't. He wants me to drink. It's like, I don't know that Tequila Boy's ever had a drink in his life, to tell you the truth. But
He's a teetotaler.
yeah, he probably is. It's
What a
like,
jerk.
because because what I know, and maybe this is getting a little off on tangent, but it's like, you know, it's interesting to me. It's fascinating to me actually that these saboteurs in our heads, these critical, or that's kind of lightweight, condemning voices in us, they don't seem to ever have a crisis of confidence. You know, the part of me that tells me I'm a piece of shit, he doesn't ever sound like he's doubtful. He doesn't say, I think you're a piece of shit. Now you might want to consider, you know, that I don't know for sure. You know, have you ever had you know, you don't have those guys like that. They go, no, you are a piece of shit, period. And it's like, you could give the best argument on the planet about why you're not, and he would sit there and go, right, and therefore you're a piece of shit. You know, we're not going. That's why I always say these kind of saboteurs are more like bots than they are actual authentic parts of us. But the bottom line is we get caught up in these power struggles with these, and we don't, you know, and that's the place where when people see that as paradoxical, you know, it's like, no, we don't have to do anything. This is about, you know, this goes back to Nathaniel Branden's stuff, what Roger Andes teaches us so well. It's acceptance. It's like, and acceptance, and I always want to point out to people, acceptance doesn't mean you like it. As a matter of fact, it's never a challenge to accept something that we like. You know, if somebody brings me ice cream right now, I'm not going to have a trouble accepting that. I'm going to go, let's go for it. We're going to have trouble accepting things that we're not happy with, we don't like a lot. But the idea is, what we're learning is that its existence, its existence in our world, or in my intrapersonal world, is not in and of itself a problem, as long as I know who I am. And I am that recovery voice, that decision maker that's able to say, and basically, because you know, and this is one of the things I say, it doesn't, you know, it's when you have these sabotaging voices that beat the crap out of you, it's like, even when you're doing better, you know, and you know this, you know, it's not an all or none thing. And even when you're doing better, you can have a bad day where those guys are just railing on you. They can, you know, I can still have that where they're just, and sometimes I can hear them anymore. And sometimes it just feels like they're just in there doing, you know, back in the back rooms, just doing something, and it feels bad. But this is the place where we get to what you know, what I've learned to refer to as, you know, feeling bad, doing good. It's like, because the idea, we don't measure how we're doing in our world, in our recovery, in our life by it's one element, how you're feeling, you know, but it's not the most important element. It's like, I think a lot of times, I mean, that's the stuff that gets us caught into addiction. Think about that. If we want to feel good all the time, you know, now, of course, the ways that, you know, that we figured out how to do that are very, very temporary, you know, and create lots of high cost afterwards, but they actually do work in the short run. You know, it's like I'm imagining that it's been 37 years, but I'm imagining that tequila is going to do the same thing to my brain that it used to do. You know, and it's like, so, and I remember that fondly. You know, but what my recovery voice has done is also remembers the rest of the, you know, the pan back, the rest of the story. And the rest of the story is, no, I'm not going to do that. I am certainly willing to feel bad today in order to do good. You know, I'm not going to, just because I'm, you know, and I think that's important for people to, for their self-esteem, to realize, you know, just because you're having a hard time or because you're feeling bad about yourself, that does not, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean, at least it doesn't to me, that your self-esteem is suffering. You know, I mean, sometimes, some days, I mean, I feel good about myself because, you know, I met my responsibilities. You know, I didn't, you know, if I'm having a hard time, I didn't leak that out sideways to being snarky with my wife or something. You know, I understood I was having a rough time, and I, you know, got some support for myself. And maybe what I did that was really honorable that day was just kind of keep my mouth shut. You know, when in the past I would not have done that. And it's like, I like the idea that at the end of the day, you know, we're looking for self-respect. We're looking for integrity. How do I feel about how I did today. And part of that, watch me try to bring in the topic again. Part of that is understanding that there's a lot of contradictory stuff, paradox maybe and otherwise, but there's lots of contradictory stuff in here that we're not ever going to find a place of unanimity. We're not going to find a place where, I don't think I could get a unanimous vote on where to go to dinner in my head. It's like, there's always the guy that always holds out for Mexican, no matter
Right.
what.
You got the entire UN in there.
You do. It's like, but we don't need the unanimous vote. We don't have to, we can go ahead and because I think that's what gets people discouraged, is thinking that because I'll hear that from my clients, they'll teach them and they learn, but we've just learned this way of thinking about, basically judging everything, including ourselves. This is bad, so it should be gone. It's like, no, it's just, it's not bad. It just is, so there are some of us who have it's a metaphor, so we don't even have to say it's a voice, but we use that a lot because we kind of identify with that metaphor. But we have a voice that tells us that, to clever ways to escape reality, to get away from our feelings when they're uncomfortable. It's like, it's like, is that a problem? And it's like, you talk to somebody who's got some recovery under their belt, and they'll go like, no, that's not the definition of a problem. That's a description of something that's going on inside of me sometimes. And it's just something that I'm much happier with nowadays, that I know what it is, so that when it speaks, I'm no longer, I always say surprise is denial's last holdout. So a lot of times with our interpersonal relationships as well as our intra, some of these things will come back and say something. We go, oh my God, I can't believe that's still there. It's like, well, fuck, of course it's still there. Where, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to be there. What's going to change is the credibility of, the credibility of my should monster, the credibility of self-hatred, the credibility of addiction or addictive thought and stuff. It's like, it's not there anymore. It's sort of like, it's sort of like, I hear it, it really is a thank you for sharing. Or a lot of times what I teach people, and I probably talked about that here some, is I call it quiet defiance, where the saboteur voice speaks, and it's fun to act it out. You just kind of glance to the side, look at it for a minute, and then you go right back to what you were doing. It's just sort of, you're just dissing them. You're just putting them, you're not being mean. You're not trying to fight back. You're just saying, okay, I know you're there. I see you. I hear you. I know who you are. No, thanks.
This reminds me of another foundational paradox. A guy in a meeting I was at one time said that recovery is about living peacefully with unresolvable issues. And that is a hell of a contradiction, because an unresolvable issue should be a splinter in our mind that just drives us up the wall and is just constantly driving us, I guess, to some kind of solution or resolution. But that's the point of being unresolvable. So maybe one day, right? But for at least today, in this moment, we don't know a way out of it. So we must find some measure of peace.
Now say that again. Living
peacefully with unresolved issues or unresolvable issues.
Yeah. I love that, because because I'm going like, okay, the human condition, what's a synonym? What can we say? It's an unresolvable condition. We're never going to stop being human. We learn to hold ourselves accountable in lots of ways. We one of the things that, sometimes, as that sometimes people who've not been around recovery very much, or just ever not been in a 12-step meeting ever, will make the mistake of making this judgment that, the addicts, in those meetings are always making excuses for themselves, and they're not taking responsibility for themselves, and go like, well, anytime you hear that, you go like, well, that person's never been to an AA meeting, because if AA is going to err, it's going to err in the other direction. In my opinion, it's going to be too hard on people when they don't need to be. But it's but the truth is, there are lots of things we just, and it comes down to the serenity prayer, and ultimately that's what it is. It's like, of the things we can do, then we need to step up and we need to do those things. And what we're talking about, panning back with these paradoxes, it just falls into the category of things that are not in the realm of our ability to change anything. We just notice them. That's a wonderful, almost entertaining way to look at that. It's living peacefully and with unresolvable issues. It's like, because I think, the response of any good Buddhist that I know would just say, like, yeah, it's like, but see, that the piece is, we make that additional assumption, especially our little Western minds, that an unresolvable issue is unacceptable. It has to be resolvable. It's like,
yeah,
no, it doesn't.
Well, and that's what the project of my active addiction was about. It was to make sure that I never had to sit with anything that was unresolvable.
Right. Well, and we were creating the illusion that these things were resolvable. We were conning ourselves into believing that we could take care of that stuff. But the good news of recovery, a lot of times, or part of the big good news is just that piece. I'm just saying, no, we don't have to resolve the unresolvable. I mean, by very definition, it's unresolvable. So what we do, we accept it.
Mm.
And what is unresolvable? Our human imperfection. It's like, okay, doesn't mean we can't improve. We can do better. Some days better than others. And my progress is not always, it's not linear. It does not always up and away. It's like one of the things that I think is really important for those of us who are recovering from, among other things, perfectionism, is that we need to realize that every day, because the perfectionism will say every day you have to be better than you were the day before. Well, talk about an unresolvable issue. It's like, that's not true for me. Now over time, probably I could even say kind of my worst self these days is likely to be better than my best self, a couple of decades ago. So I think over time there is that kind of growth where we get better and better and better. But as far as just the in the moment kind of thing, it's like, and it's one of the things that probably gets as much response as any that I hear from the group on Thursday night from responses, is how valuable it is for them to hear anybody talk about having the humility to be able to say, I can have confidence in myself now. I can have confidence in my recovery, and I can also totally fuck things up in a minute. And it's like, and I'm not going to, and I do not have to sit in judgment of myself. I do not have to go back into the idea of like, that's unacceptable for me to fuck up, because, well, it better not be unacceptable because I do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to learn from it every time. And I never, into those people who think we're making excuses. No, and making an excuse is never acceptable. It's like, I mean, the little nutshell I have is, you learn from fucking up, and it becomes, success, because what did you do? I learned something.
Right. Well, I mean, it's taking a long view of progress and of recovery, and
yes, that's
minor deviations, if we can put them in the right positive context, then that line's going to straighten out eventually, I feel like.
Yeah, over the big picture.
Yeah.
See, I really do think this is something I think is becoming more natural to me at the age. I think is taking the like you said, the long view or the pan back version, is because things are going to make more sense that way, even when they don't make sense. Even if I can look at stuff, and because one of the things that I'm a big believer in is that hindsight is really the only accurate insight that we have. Our little human conscious minds, they love to be involved in everything, they just love it. And so we have this kind of, I think of as a delusional thinking, and I can have it as much as anybody, that my insight is going to cause this wonderful, great change in me. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure we could find examples of that, the insight where it gets you started. But ultimately, the best insight comes with hindsight, when you look back and you go, you know what? For the last few weeks, I have not been feeling that same anxiety or even just the last couple of days. I haven't been feeling that same anxiety I used to feel and that I was talking about earlier, in a couple of meetings ago. It's like, so and how did we do that? Well, we did that by making those little changes, by going to practice, doing things that somebody makes a suggestion. We say, okay, well, fuck it. Why not try it? Or sometimes just realize, just change something. It's like, if one of the questions you can always ask yourself is in this situation that I just feel like I made a mistake or messed up in this situation, what did I do that was predictable of me, and what might I do different that might be surprising?
Can I ask, how's things looking for tomorrow?
It's going to be early. I've never been to chemotherapy, so I'll go to chemotherapy, and I'm just grateful that we're finally starting treatment. So afterwards, I may have lots of moaning and whining and complaining, but it's like right now, I've got chemo tomorrow morning. I'm assuming that's a longer appointment to get it all set up, this protocols and everything get set up first time. I think ordinarily when I go in there, it'll be an hour and a half. But
is this the one where they have like an IV drip that kind of drips the?
It's I don't know. It's an infusion. I think not. I think this isn't the because that's what I've done when I've sat with people through chemo before, where they go and it's like, that's heavy duty chemo where they just basically poison the whole person to kill the cancer. And try to get the person to live through it. It's I'll tell you after tomorrow, but I think it's just a IV infusion. I only have it once a week. It's and probably they tell me probably 5 times is what I'll have. And it's like, so I have like 35 radiation treatments. This is primarily a radiation regime, and it's like, and I'll have 5 days a week I'm doing radiation, and on Wednesday mornings I'll be going and doing chemo and still doing radiation that day. So it's like 7 weeks of that. And yeah, I'm hoping it's not that, but it's like, whatever. I trust these people who are treating me. I like them all, and they seem to know what they're doing. So I'll just, rather than, and that's a good example of something that is different for me than it would have been. It's like in the past, I learned this from my family, and I became very masterful at it. I would be coming up without even knowing I was doing it. I would be coming up with all kinds of angles on how, basically stories, telling myself to scare the crap out of myself about what this process was going to be like. And I haven't been doing that. I mean, even to the point where it's like I've noticed that talking to people about it is like, and I've acknowledged that, and I just did to you. It's like, it's very likely that I am being far more upbeat than I'm going to be in a couple of weeks. It's like about this, but it's like, but I'm a big believer that worrying on something ahead of time before it happens, that doesn't do any good. So I'm having as nice a time as I can. And the truth is, this is one of the things that people will tell me I'm crazy about sometimes. I'm not making a joke when I say I'll go to chemotherapy tomorrow morning and try to I'll have as nice a time as I can have, and it's like, there's no, I'm a real believer that it's fine. You can have a good time doing that. It's like, I had a guy one time when I was standing back in the days where when you got traffic tickets, you had to go to traffic school physically. I was standing in one of those long lines at traffic school and talking to some people, doing whatever. And this guy behind me is this kind of a grumpy guy. He goes, he said, excuse me. He said, are you having fun? And I go like, yeah, I guess I am. It's like, and it's like, I realized in that conversation that it's like, a lot of people don't know to do that. I bet you do. It's a natural thing for you, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, I bet.
Well, I think it's going to go well. I think it's going to go well for you.
Well, yeah, me too. I want to get through it. I want to feel as not, I don't want to feel horrible going through it. And I'll be glad when it's done.
In more ways than one, you're properly equipped. So I think, I'll just be thinking of you, and
thank you.
Hopefully you can, pop in whenever you're feeling good, and we could chat about it.
Well, and everybody on this team tells me that I'm not going to be. They say it's unlikely I'm going to be feeling bad for a while. They say I gather that it's really the repetition of the radiation that basically is going to. I've heard everybody I've talked to who's had radiation treatment says in one way or another, they say they cannot possibly describe the kind of fatigue that comes with it. They go, it's like, it's just different than anything else, but it's just profound. So, I mean, I feel good to have that information. And what it means is, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to fight that at all. I'm practicing what we were just talking about. I'm just accept it and go like that. That's part of what goes with this.
Well, I think that about does it for today.
Okay.
I love you, and I love what you're doing for us here in this podcast and all that you work. And I don't know if I've been as vocal about it here in the podcast, but I hope you know how grateful I am that you're in my life.
I'm just so grateful to have you in my life. And we have Roger Andis coming up on the podcast, and Celeste Yvonne is a guest that we can all look forward to. So thank you so much.
Tend your life, tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.